Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, 2-0 in the preseason. The Suns are rolling. They've flipped a switch immediately. What's real and what's not real from the Phoenix Suns preseason performance so far? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Thursday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everyday or get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from delightful downtown Phoenix. How are we feeling on this Thursday, Ben Garcia?
I'm good. Just got done producing a show a little bit ago, and it's safe to say everyone is kind of on the same page today with how well the Suns have looked through 2 preseason games. And that's just really nice to have. The vibes have never been higher, and this team over the past 3 years has never been more likable. And that is a start that we could not overlook. So it's been nice. It's been a nice little change of scenery.
So we'll have another preseason game on Friday before we know it, and that will be the home debut of Tyus Jones and Mike Budenholzer and these rookies and everybody else. But in the meantime, we wanted to take stock of what is maybe real and not real about how quickly they've flipped the switch in terms of their style of play. I mean, all throughout the offseason, Ben, you and I have been harping, play faster, take more threes, have a real identity on the offensive end, maximize the big three. And honestly, I feel like we've seen them do all of it so far. So let's kind of zoom in on those 2 categories in particular. If we look at the threes, the Suns attempted 39 in the first game, and I believe 46 in the second game. They've had 20-plus fast break points in each of these games. And again, it's a scrimmage. Maybe that's a little inflated. But can they keep this up? Is this just what it's going to be like starting October 22nd or whatever it is out in the new arena against the Clippers, and we're just off to the races here?
If it is, it's going to be a really fun season. I mean, it's going to be so much more fun than it was last year. We've talked about it before. It was stagnant. It's way too much hero ball. I mean, it clearly is real that this is going to be some form or facet that Budenholzer wants to run his offense. Again, we'll save this for a different time if you really wanted to, but Budenholzer clearly was in the lab and clearly had spent a lot of time with each individual guy, especially the big 3, and said, listen, this is what you do well. That's cool. We have to adapt this into our game. Otherwise, we're not going to work out. Last night, the outpour on social media with the Suns shooting threes was overwhelmingly a little sarcastic with, oh my gosh, what team is this? Is this a modern NBA team? Like, you can't be a relevant team in the NBA without having some sort of 3-point shot that is very prevalent in your offense. So it's absolutely real. Some of the other things, we could talk about the pace. We could talk about the 3-point shooting. Like, do I expect Ryan Dunn to be that awesome all the time? That's not fair to put. And I'm the champion of the Ryan Dunn fan club. Oso Ighodaro as well. Like, there are some things where you're like, there's going to be some learning pains. There's going to be some times where we're calling for Ryan Dunn to be benched for a quarter because that's just what rookies do. But the pace and the 3-point shooting, definitely, I would be surprised if what we're watching right now in the preseason isn't exactly what we see in the regular season. Now, to what degree, how great is that going to be? I don't know. But I know that this is what it's going to look like.
I actually don't think what you said about Bud and the lab and all of that stuff is unrelated here. I mean, I think that it is exactly what has surprised me the most and why I buy this. I think that the chemistry and the cohesion already and the buy-in is what has been really the most impressive part of all of this. These guys not only seem to be ready with their head on a swivel and flowing from one action to the next. I mean, how many times already have we seen a lot of the most highlight versions of this have been Oso Ighodaro on those pick and rolls where he catches the ball in the middle around the free throw line in that short roll area that a Blake Griffin and others, Draymond Green really created as a mold, and he flips it to the corner, or he finds a cutter, or they stall out on one side of the floor. They immediately reverse it to the other side of the floor and flow into a quick dribble handoff or a side pick and roll. That stuff to me signals whether it was the fact that they got started early in September, like they all told us they did at Media Day, having open runs and getting their individual work in and developing some of that together, or it is just Bud making his imprint really, really quickly. It's not fluky to me at all what we're seeing, because it's every player. It's every grouping of players. It's every moment of the game. It's not like the starters are doing it and then the bench comes in and we'll see. This whole thing feels like a team that has that identity we were begging for all August and September, and has the chemistry we were wondering about all last season. Like, I think that it's at the very least been an amazing starting point.
And that kind of jumps off of what I was saying at the very, very beginning of the show when you were just asking me how everything's going. There was a thought in my mind last year with this team where, do they like each other? Like, do they like each other? How does anyone... I get why people don't get along with Kevin Durant, but he's such a superbly talented guy that everyone at least wants to gravitate to that guy. It's like the Aaron Rodgers effect. You might not like him, but the dude is superbly talented. I was like, why does Bradley Beal kind of feel like an outcast? I made a little bit of it during the offseason where I was like, why are Kevin Durant and Devin Booker always hanging out and Bradley Beal never is? And you would quickly said, the dude's got kids. He's got a family. Like, he's not all that into hanging out with the bros as much anymore. And I bought into that as well, but these guys like each other. They're having fun on the bench. Like, if the Suns don't win a championship, if the Suns don't make the Western Conference Finals, it's not going to be as gruesome as it was last year, where it was a chore to watch the Suns on a Friday night, or a chore to skip church on Sunday to watch the Sunday showcase because you were worried they were going to get embarrassed on a national scale. This offense, I told you before we went on, I was like, yeah, Brendon, I don't think I ever remember seeing the ball move that quickly and that fluidly to where I was like, okay, that's too many passes. Take the open shot. Like, it just seems like they like each other more. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, I think identity and cohesion, real. I think fun to watch, that seems real. On the pace side of things, maybe to throw a droplet of cold water here, and this is not me doubting that it will happen here, but so Tyus Jones, I think 13 assists to 1 turnover. Like, everything is as advertised with what he's been able to do to juice this offense. I want to see how that looks with him not being on the court when there are moments where the big three have the ball in their hands again. I mean, we've already seen teams like when KD, we applauded that KD had some opportunities to run offense last night when we were singing his praises. But we saw, what did the Pistons do? They full court pressed him. And they're going to, when it is the big three, like we saw so often last year, operating as the primary initiators, how do they adjust to that? What does that look like? Those are some of the things that I guess I'm going to want to watch. And on the other end of the floor, when they do press and run a little bit, we have seen some transition defensive things to sort out. It's nice to punish the other team when you're charging down the court for a breakaway layup, but I think pace is one of those things we saw with the 7 seconds or less teams. We see it with the Kings in the NBA right now. that makes your defense harder. It makes your job as a defense more difficult because that's going to bleed over to what your opponent wants to do. Your opponent is going to say, all right, we're playing fast. That's what this game is now. And we've seen with the Suns so far in this preseason that there's some times where all of a sudden Tyus Jones is now defending a Cade Cunningham or a LeBron or, whatever. I don't have a specific example in mind, but some of those cross matches and those issues you can run into where you're matching up size-wise in a troubling way. How are you making up for that? How are you playing with that high IQ on the defensive end to allow yourself to continue to dictate the pace of the game the way that they obviously want to?
Yeah, I think it's a case-by-case thing that's going to be for each. Like for the Kings, you're probably not going to want to go full court press the entire time because I don't really want to get into a running matchup with Domantas Sabonis, one of the better rim runners in the big men in the NBA. De'Aaron Fox, potentially the fastest guy in the NBA. And then at times have Tyus Jones get switched on to DeMar DeRozan in the mid-range. Like, I don't want to deal with that. But like with the Lakers, things like that, like, yeah, I do think that they're going to continue to play with pace, but I don't worry about it as much because I don't think playing with pace is going to be their outright identity. I think it's going to be their three-point shooting and at times playing quicker. But you had mentioned it as well. The Suns' Achilles heel for a while was kind of, especially during the Chris Paul era, and it's why everyone was kind of harping to wanting to see campaign earlier in that Denver Nuggets series or in the Pelicans series, where teams would just full court press them and make it tougher and wear them down. And I don't think that this will work in the playoffs, but I think with an adjustment like Budenholzer can do and with a surplus of guys that bring the ball up, I'm not super worried about it and pushing it with pace. But you're right.
Yeah.
It can affect you defensively. It can.
Yeah, it's some of the wrinkles that they will have to sort out. And I think I agree that I don't think playing with pace has to mean that you're sprinting down the court every moment that you possibly can. And maybe it is going to be more of a selective thing when Tyus is in the game. But even if they aren't a fast break constant team the way Steve Nash may have made them 20 years ago, they can at least be a pace team even in the half court, and we've seen that as well. So that's, I think, the most important thing to keep the defense honest and play the game on your terms. Let's talk about some news that we missed out on because there was a game yesterday. Bradley Beal appeared on a podcast, shed some light on his arrival and how it all ended up that he arrived here in the Valley, as well as the NBA GM survey where apparently a sweep means that the guy that sweeps you is better than you, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Let's get into all that next. First, today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app. Gametime also has a new feature right now called Gametime Picks. In addition to being the best place to buy any ticket, concerts, comedy, theater, sports, and more, those Gametime Picks make getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Whether you already know what event you want to attend and you click in and see what the best deals might be for a given seat at that event, let's say a concert coming up in the fall or winter, or you're just wanting to find something to do, maybe in the Valley as it starts to cool down, or maybe you're going out of town and you want to just check out what you can go participate in as far as the events in the city you're traveling to. Gametime curates it and puts the best deals at the top of the page no matter what. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling here. So Bradley Beal appeared on Theo Pinson's podcast. Let me go ahead and get the name here. Is
Pinson still in the NBA?
I don't think
that
he is. And
Such
also,
a
he
weird
was
guy
on
to have
that
a
bench
podcast.
when the Mavs killed the Suns in Game 7. So
Was he?
I
I don't even remember.
kind of resent that Brad appeared, on this one, to be honest
Brad
with you.
wasn't on that team. He doesn't care.
Well, he should. He should care. It's the history of the team that he's on now. Reminder, everybody, check out the Locked On NBA podcast all month for season preview coverage. Also want to remind everybody to go to our Locked On Suns board bets for the season. Ben and I are going to review all of our answers and list off your answers next week. So get your answers in. The link is in the show description below. You can predict win totals, standings, all that stuff yourself, and you can prove us wrong when the season wraps up and all of you make us look like fools. Okay, so he's on this podcast, Ben, and he basically walks through the whole thing as far as the departure from Washington, the no trade clause, the other teams that were pursuing him, and come to find out it was basically what we thought. Miami, Milwaukee, two teams that eventually ended up pursuing Damian Lillard, of course, and one of them got him. The other one was very disappointed not to get him. Maybe that's why they both passed on all of this. And then he ends up finding out that the Suns were interested, and the rest is sort of history. What stuck out to you? There were a few clips going around and a few different elements of his telling of this whole story. What part of it interested you the most as it relates to Bradley Beal?
Yeah, we'll get through, I'm sure, most of it, but what shocked me the most is that he released all this information. Like at one point, he was talking about like the Suns and that, and he was like, "No, I don't think that's gonna work." And then he had kind of listed all these reasons why the Suns. There was only one thing where I was like, "Come on, Brad. If we're gonna be honest and we're gonna tell the full story, be a little bit more honest and candid." Yeah, the son of my agent is Josh Barlstein. And I think we're going to maybe help that influenced a little bit with the Mark Barlstein, Josh Barlstein connection, which he never
basically
mentioned.
Was like, my agent just came to me and brought up the Suns. It's like,
wow, that's crazy, Brad. I wonder why.
But I agree with you that it was interesting that he was so candid about the fact that at first blush, he was like, I'm not sure if we fit together. You know what I mean? So even to him, the reaction we all had was kind of the same thing of like, can we all play together? But it sounds like once he got here, he was like, these dudes want it just as much as me, and I think the work ethic can maybe get us through it.
Yeah, and it's not just Brad that really impressed me in that. It was Kevin Durant, where it really has showed me that Kevin Durant just wants to hoop. He doesn't care about who gets the most credit. It's why he worked with the Warriors. Is like he had texted. They got in a group chat, and basically Book and KD were like, "So are we doing this thing?" And everyone was just cool with it. Like I love that Booker and Kevin Durant were like, "Yeah, we don't care." Maybe and Booker to a lesser extent because as soon as Beal showed up, he was like, "This is Book's country." Like to have that mutual respect for each other and to hear that and to have no like worries or selfishness that someone's going to get more than the other. Like it just leads me to believe that maybe the issue really was just Frank Vogel last year. And not only do these guys like each other, but it's going to work. It's going to work. So I was shocked for a multitude of reasons, you know, him talking about Chris Middleton and everything.
Yeah, that was the part that shocked me.
Shocking.
Was he in real time? He's telling that story, and he's like, "Bucks probably don't want me to say this," and he didn't even like take a moment to second guess if he was going to keep going. He's like, "Yeah, they were going to trade Chris Middleton for me." And what's funny though is like, you know, not to get too deep on it. It's just off the cuff. I get it. It's a podcast. It's not like he's putting his heart and soul into every little morsel of the story, but he talks about how Middleton being part of it made him feel a little gross about going to Milwaukee, that they would break up somebody. And I guess the distinction that he's kind of making there is that Middleton helped them get a ring.
Yeah.
But it's like you were going to come here to Phoenix for either Chris Paul, who helped them make the finals, or DeAndre Ayton, who got drafted here and made the finals too. Like, either way, you know, and I don't know what the deal would have been with Miami. I guess probably less important pieces, so maybe that's why the Heat thing appealed to him the most. But it's like you didn't want Middleton to go because that would have felt gross to you. But Chris Paul, whatever, you're good, you know. But look, I think he got desperate a little bit, and he knew he wanted to leave the Wizards, and he finally had made that known after so long of waiting it out. And then at a certain point, it's like, I got to go somewhere, you know.
Well, waiting it out, making sure he got his Supermax deal, same thing. You know, it's basically what these guys do these days. Yeah, that was interesting where I didn't think about that. The Chris Paul situation where he was literally being traded for Chris Paul. So I don't know how that
I don't
went
think
down.
Chris felt too like the loyalty was safe and sound with that deal. I think that Chris might have had a different view of it than Brad did at that point. But again, like, he wanted to leave the Wizards. He was running out of options.
He was. And, here's one thing that I'll say about the situation is because of how well, since the Suns got swept and the Olympics happened and Coach Budenholzer gets hired and the preseason has been fun, we've been able to see what they're going to do. If you would ask me 6 months ago, would you redo the Bradley Beal trade? I would have absolutely said yes. And I think a lot of people would have. Vibes are high. Maybe I'm a stupid fan that doesn't understand, but I don't know if I would redo it. I think I like what we have in Bradley Beal now. He should be healthy. And Brad has a real chance to flip the script, which not a lot of athletes get to do, where a lot of Suns fans and media members were kind of in the place that I was 4 months ago, and maybe I still am. But he has a chance to turn that on its head and really show that, like, he can be the contributing player to at least a finals appearance or a Western Conference finals appearance. Championship just feels so high. So there was a lot of emotions through that interview that really struck me.
Well, look, we don't have to dive into it, but just to make my feelings known on the trade again, to remind people, because yes, you can judge it based on the ups and downs of Bradley Beal's performance in a vacuum. But the Suns were absolutely saved by the fact that it worked out the way that it did. Their backup plan, if Chris Paul leaves the team, is they either cut him and use their mid-level exception, which I've said at this point, best case scenario is Dante DiVincenzo, and maybe you can dream up that you were going to get him on a mid-level deal the way that the Knicks did in 2023. I personally don't think you can just assume you're going to get the best mid-level guy. So whoever you think you're going to get, and you have Landry Shamet left over as a trade chip and some pick swaps, that the team is worse. I don't see a way where if they don't trade for Bradley Beal that the team has the ceiling that it has now. So from a Beal standpoint, it's interesting to hear the different ripples and wrinkles that he went through as all of that was playing out. From a Suns standpoint, I think it was a godsend. I think that if that didn't materialize, you're looking at a lot worse of an outcome.
Yeah, and I'll take 30 seconds to say this, because I went on the air multiple times, and there's a lot of people, a lot of casuals in the NBA space that are like, the Suns got fleeced. The Suns got the Wizards heist. The Suns gave up a bunch of second-round picks, a bunch of pick swaps, Chris Paul and Landry Shamet, who you hated, Suns fans.
And Chris Paul, who they were probably going to cut.
Oh, they had to. They had to. They weren't going to pay the rest of that salary. They weren't going. So
a guy you were going to cut, a guy you hated, and fake draft picks, and you got got a player who's great, whether you love him or hate him. Bradley Beal is a good player, better than anyone else they were going to get.
The draft swaps were just for PR reasons, because there's never going to be a time where the Wizards are going to. You know what? Let's swap this year, Wizards. Let's swap picks. Like,
history would say, Washington is not exactly in a position to be confident about that. Yeah. So I agree, though. I think that it's a big opportunity for Brad to flip that script to where there's absolutely no doubt, and that conversation is put to bed. If he can buckle in, fit, stay healthy, play like he needs to for this team to win a championship, then that debate will never need to be had again. Although people still try to have the should they have done the KD trade debate. So maybe there's no hope for Bradley Beal to get out of those controversies. Let's jump to the GM survey where Anthony Edwards just straddled up, swept Devin Booker, and now everybody thinks he's the belle of the ball. We'll talk about if that's fair or not next. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL and NBA fans start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Better yet, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All at FanDuel.com. Let's check out what is going on FanDuel. I'm locked into Dodgers-Padres. That game will be over by the time that we speak, that you guys are hearing this. The Minnesota Lynx, game one of the WNBA Finals in New York City on Thursday night, are 6.5-point underdogs. The over-under line is 159. What is that? Each team has to score 80. I think it's going to be a high-scoring series. 2 5-out teams that like to play fast. I think we're going to get high scoring. I like that over there. No matter what, you're getting those $200 in bonus bets. So frankly, put money wherever it feels good to you and then get to work with those bonus bets. All at FanDuel.com. All right, Ben, let's close out the show here real quick. So I've done probably like 5 segments, which is like 4 too many over the years on, well, hold on, Booker versus Tatum. That used to be the hot debate. If you were ranking the NBA, it would always break down Book Tatum because they're kind
Who
of
was it?
right
Who
on
would
the
you
fringe.
lean towards?
Well, in fairness, I think that it has fluctuated over the years,
Okay,
but I
all right.
think that overall, I would prefer to have Devin Booker's skill set given what he is on the offensive end as a shot creator. But I think it's fair to say that you could have had Tatum over him at times. Probably right now, a lot of people do. The dude just won a championship, so
Wow.
it's hard to make that argument. But we're not talking about that now because Anthony Edwards has entered the chat, and he now is somebody that folks want to place quite high in the pecking order in the 2-guard rankings here, as a lot of NBA GMs did. I'm curious to hear what you have to say on that debate, though, Ben, because I brought it up, actually. It hasn't aired. It'll go up in the feed for our everydayers to check out soon, where we did a Western Conference preview at the top. They invited us, Ben. They invited the Suns hosts to be part of the Top of the West preview show. And I put it to those guys because it was the Nuggets, the Mavs, the Thunder, and the Wolves, and me. Those were the hosts. And I said, do the Suns have the worst, best player of any of us? When you're talking about Jokic, Shea, Luka, and then that basically became the same debate that we're about to have here between Ant and Book. So what's fair here? One guy's way younger, on his way up. We've seen almost every minute of Book. Where do you stand?
So I had this argument with the host of the show I'm on, the Drive with Jody Ayler in the mornings, last February, and it was Devin Booker or Anthony Davis, and I was firmly on Devin
Edwards.
Booker. Sorry, who did I just say? Did I say Jason Tatum?
Davis. You said Anthony Davis, which
That
different
was
conversation.
stupid.
We could debate
Was
that,
it-
but not right now.
No, that's a stupid conversation because I don't know why I said that. But Devin Booker and Anthony Edwards, we had that back in February, and I was firmly on Devin Booker, and he was firmly on Anthony Edwards. And you know, man, it's hard to erase some blemishes of Devin Booker's playoff career. And he was good in that closeout game, or I guess I should say in that elimination game. He wasn't awesome in that series. Anthony Edwards has an ability to get to the rim that I just don't believe Devin Booker has, and is just more athletic than Devin Booker, a little bit twitchier. I don't believe he's as good as a shooter as Devin Booker or a better shot creator. But when you go also to the defensive side, Anthony Edwards has the ability to take guys out of games. I don't think Devin Booker has that ability. It is so close. It is so close. But because of what I saw in the playoffs last year, I do think, and every Suns fan boos me in the chat, Anthony Edwards did surpass Devin Booker. And I just lean towards Anthony Edwards is still getting better. I think we've hit Devin Booker's prime, which is amazing. It's a Hall of Famer, but I think we haven't seen the best of Anthony Edwards yet. And at times he can shoot himself out of games. He's got to be better as a three-point shooter. But I think that stuff can develop. And so for now, and I'm willing to have my mind change, I think it's Ant over Book right now.
Yeah, I think any reasonable Suns fan has to be able to engage with that, right? I mean, like you got to be honest with yourself at a certain point. It can't just be that if Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal were the 3 best players in the NBA, they would have won a championship. Like you got to be real. Yeah, I mean, without like putting too much analysis into Anthony Edwards, who doesn't play for this team and who is a persona non grata, I think, for Suns fans at this point. He has stepped up that 3-point shooting every year in the playoffs, really. And that has gone a long way for him. I think he ran out of gas last year, but I think the defensive point and the athleticism on the offensive end to break down defenses that you mentioned, those are the two things that I think Book it struggles to replicate. And I think you're absolutely right, too, that the GMs here in this survey, like, they're giving him credit because he's 22. They're expecting that this year he's going to take yet another step forward, and I think trying to kind of preempt that a little bit in their analysis in terms of this voting, which, who knows how seriously they even take it, but I think that's the general kind of narrative right now for sure. To play devil's advocate to you and give Book some credit, I know we've debated whether it's sustainable what he did in those 2023 playoffs. Yes, he did end that run getting hurt, and he has ended a lot of playoffs battered and bruised a little bit, but he was pretty darn close on the defensive end to what we've seen from Ant during that playoff run. He was a freight train to the basket, especially in transition during that playoff run. Enormously efficient, looking every bit the part like a Kobe or MJ clone, like everybody was saying that Anthony Edwards was this year during that 2023 playoff run. So if Book can get anywhere in the stratosphere of what he did against the Clippers and the Nuggets in that run, I think the conversation gets close again. But until then, it's basketball. I'm always going to take the more athletic person, the guy who can apply their athletic and physical tools at a higher level. It's just what it is. Victor Wembanyama is going to dominate the NBA because he's freaking 7'4". It's not rocket science at the end of the day, and I think that's just kind of what we're in for. But again, that's why they also have Kevin Durant, right? So the Wolves don't have Kevin Durant.
So that's a different conversation.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying to make Suns fans feel better.
Well, because they say it, listen, they say it and they go, oh, you're not a real fan, or look, he's got a little bit better efficiency. Like, come on, guys. Basketball is more than just a stat sheet. Otherwise, James Harden is the greatest basketball player ever, and Russell Westbrook is right behind him. Like, we need to stop getting so stat-brained. Like, yes, there are some things. Efficiency, Devin Booker's more efficient. But in the playoffs, when things aren't going your way, and you have the athletic ability that Anthony Edwards has to get to the rim, I was literally screaming it at my television, like, Brad, this guy's coming to the hoop right now, and he's going to try to dunk it. And I'm sure Brad knew that too. It doesn't matter, man. To end the Suns season, he's doing a poster dunk on Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. Like, Devin Booker can't do that. Booker is still awesome, and I think he's the best number 2 in the NBA. And I'm not sure. So, I think he's better than Jason Tatum. I just think Anthony Edwards, after that playoff series, where he was the best player, and Booker, I'm not so sure, was top 3 in that series, top 4. I have to give the edge to that guy, just like how I do with Luka now.
Nikhil Alexander-Walker, I think, was like the best
player
on the court.
That was
Jaden
so
McDaniels
frustrating.
For a few games was like the freaking second coming of Scottie Pippen. So, yeah. But I agree. I mean, like, to your original point about Ant in that series and in that postseason, he was much more up and down than I think people want to admit. He had great games, he had awful games, and they just were a really good defensive team, and Kat and other guys were able to kind of help him where needed on the offensive end. Naz Reid as well, of course. So, yeah, I think it's a fun debate. I think, second place isn't a bad spot to be. If you told me the Suns have the second best 2-guard, the second best forward, and, a high level third banana, I still feel the same about the team. Like, it doesn't change anything to have these rankings, but it is just kind of fun. It's why we all like to pay attention to this stuff. So that's what we're talking about.
And this stuff is subjective, and it can change in a heartbeat. I am doing everything I can to want Devin Booker to be that guy. But I think when I lie to myself, that's when I set expectations too high. And that's when I get upset over something that's a me problem, when I'm expecting something from Devin Booker that isn't Book. Now, listen, it can change, and I'm willing to have my mind changed. But also, the best shooting guard in basketball is kind of stupid now because it's positionless basketball.
Because Shea was both on the point guard list and the shooting guard list.
That was so crazy. That was crazy.
That illustrates why this is all very different than it used to be. But that'll wrap us up for the day. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. Become an everydayer. Don't forget to fill out your Locked On Suns board bets. Make your picks known. Make your thoughts on the team known. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why we're right, and we'll read them off next week. Give our picks as well and keep track of it throughout the season. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.